Welcome everybody, my name is Brendan Snyder, thank you for joining me. If you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, I'm attempting to reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers, and if you could click that button, I would greatly appreciate it. Alright, we're going to take a look today at an unofficial release called Outtakes by Pink Floyd. It's obviously a fan-compiled thing, but the quality of this, both in packaging and in sound, is exceptionally well. The material on here is comprised from 1994's Division Bell and 2014's The Endless River. So while the material on here is from the later years, going back, the band formed in 1965 and originally gained a following as a psychedelic pop group, but their debut album, Piper at the Gates of Dawn, came out in 1967. And following the initial success of the band with Syd Barrett, the band did replace him with David Gilmour, and then they went through an exploratory period over the next 5 years until the release of the 1973 album Dark Side of the Moon, which is one of the all-time most successful albums in the history of rock music. The album itself has charted for over 950 weeks on the Billboard 200 and has sold in excess of an estimated 45 million copies. And the band would continue that success with Wish You Were Here coming out in 1975, followed by Animals in 1977, and then The Wall in 1979. And this album here also being a dominating album with sales in excess of 24 million copies. And then by the time of the 1983 album, The Final Cut, this one here, which was actually intended originally to be a soundtrack to the movie of The Wall, but later becoming more of really a Roger Waters solo album, with the band having little input into it. And then ultimately by 1984, Roger Waters would quit the band. And so the remaining members, Nick Mason on drums, David Gilmour on guitar, would reunite with Rick Wright on keyboards, who had been dismissed prior to the recording of The Wall, and then they would continue the band. And by 1987, they would release Momentary Lapse of Reason, totally re-establishing the group for a younger, new audience. And then it would be 7 long years until they released The Division Bell in 1994. And this album here was originally intended to be a double album, with one disc being the album that we know it as, The Division Bell, and the other disc being an instrumental ambient album that was nicknamed The Big Spliff. The unused material from the ambient album would ultimately resurface later on their next release, but it would be 20 long years until we got that album, The Endless River, which came out in 2014, and you can see the box set there in the middle behind me. And so the material from The Endless River being comprised of unused material from the Division Bell, David Gilmour and Nick Mason would use demos from Rick Wright and build around it, embellishing and adding additional layered tracks or redoing drums and guitar fills and stuff like that in order to create new tracks and use these as tributes to Rick Wright, who had already passed away at this point. And of course, Gilmour has since said that this is the final Pink Floyd album. Which brings us up to what I want to cover here, which is the Outtakes album that is comprised of material from both the Division Bell in '94 and Endless River in 2014. And it's comprised of 18 studio tracks plus 1 bonus track, the live rehearsal of Money from 1994. And the material covers 11 different songs comprised of different versions of those songs. Now typically I don't like when these tracks are sequenced one right after the other in terms of outtake, version 1, version 2, version 3, that sort of a thing, but the tracks here are so unique in the versions that they are that it's actually really interesting to hear how they developed, and they really sound more like a continuation of one another as opposed to just rehearing the same track. There's 8 tracks from the Endless River sessions and 10 tracks from the Division Bell sessions. All of the tracks have been released in some version by Pink Floyd, so it's not like you're getting entirely brand new tracks here, but what is of unique is the version of the track and the length of time that it is. For example, there's a track on here called Alon's Why off of Endless River, and it's 1 minute and 57 seconds on the album. But here on the Outtakes album, there's 3 versions of it. There's one that is 2-minute track like the one off of the Endless River, but there's also 2 versions that are nearly 6 minutes long. The sound quality here is really good too, with all the volume levels being consistent at the same level. There's no tape hiss or defects or anything like that in the recordings. There's a track on here called Everca, and there's 4 versions of it, followed by an alternate version of the song Wearing the Inside Out off of the Division Bell. Now, with Everca being an early version of that track, Wearing the Inside Out, it's cool to get the different versions of it and then hear the sort of final version that it became, albeit this being an outtake or alternate version of it. But what's also interesting here is that the development from those early versions into the later versions here, with those earlier ones being a more raw version of it and maybe being a more guitar-centric or a more keyboard-centric version of it. As I said earlier, you know, it's more like hearing the track developing or continuing than simply rehearing the same track over and over on this. So let's take a quick look at this. This is the front cover, and again, I think the packaging is done really well on here for being something that is a fan-compiled thing and an unofficial release. They use album cover and single releases to create the album cover here. There's the spine of it, and then the back side, what I really like here is that they use alternate album artwork like outtakes of the songs and stuff on here, and then of course you see the track listing that's there. This is the inside of it. It doesn't have a booklet, just this insert. The disc itself is, I'll pop it out here, a silver burned disc. So it is not just well, I shouldn't say a burned disc, but it is a silver disc, meaning it is professionally done, not a burned copy off a computer or something. And then again, the underside of for the inlay is done really well. So I think that the content that is here and the way that this is pieced together is just exceptionally well. So the first 3 tracks on here are different outtake versions of the song Alon's Why, followed by Untitled number 1, then Anacina as an outtake, and then a 2014 alternate mix of it, and then TBS 14, there's 2 versions of that on here, followed by Everca, there's 4 versions of that on here. Then Wearing the Inside Out, a 1994 LP version of this, then Cluster 1 outtake, Marooned outtake, Untitled number 2 outtake, Untitled number 3, which comes from the Color of Infinity version here, and then Take It Back, which is a French promo single, and then the bonus track, the 19th track on here, a 1994 live rehearsal. And so bottom line, in terms of this compilation here, you know, being a big Pink Floyd fan that I am, and there being such a limited amount of content from the later years, only having had those 2 albums, this collection, in my opinion, is really welcomed. None of the tracks here appear on the box set later years. Again, you can see that behind me there, and there's a separate review for that on my channel. So none of that is here. It's not like this is duplicating that, and I'm not really sure why Pink Floyd chose not to include any of this, whether they call these demos or whatnot, because maybe they're not fully fleshed out. But it would have been nice if Pink Floyd would do an official release. I would certainly buy Pink Floyd's version of this, but since they don't, I'm certainly welcome to pick it up this way here. And now this is an extremely difficult thing to find, in my opinion. I've hunted for it for a few years now, only seeing it pop up here or there. It was $50 on eBay at one point, all the way up to $150. I lucked out and got this for 27 bucks, so of course I jumped on it, and I'm really ecstatic at how great the quality and everything is on it for it only being the 27 bucks, and my opinion of what I think is how rare this is. But if you can track down these songs, I totally think it's worthwhile in checking out and hearing them if you're a really big Pink Floyd fan. And as far as I'm concerned, this is totally worthy to carry the Pink Floyd name. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and if you did, please remember to comment, like, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, and I hope everyone has a great day. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.